Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about PlayStation 3 emulation with RPCS3, and RPCS3 just got a brand new update with an exciting new feature. So if you're a fan of not tempting your fate and saving your state, you might be excited about this update here. Multi-slot save states. On top of that, they've implemented shortcuts to make things even easier here. So the shortcuts for booting the last 4 save states in-game are Ctrl-Alt-1 through 4, which boot the last save state all the way up to the 4th to last save state. On top of that, they've added 2 settings to control save state count. One is maximum save state files, and this controls how many files there are before RPCS3 starts to delete old files when creating new ones. By default, it's set to 4. And the second one here is maximum save state file size, and they say this controls the total file size of all save states before RPCS3 starts to delete old files when creating new ones. By default, the limit is set to 4 gigs, and they say this is a precaution as most save states are between 250 to 500 megabytes for 90% of the games. So the default limit won't affect most. If you wanted to see this in action, their GitHub does have a video showcasing how everything works. So if you're interested and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, link is within the GitHub link in the bottom of the description below. I don't hide my sources. But wait, there's more. There also seems to be a performance improvement in the works. And I say in the works because this contribution has been merged, but there does seem to be a bit of a regression. So it's titled Resource Binding Model Rewrites Part 2 of 2, and they say overall a 10 to 20% boost is observed depending on the game. Mesa drivers benefit the most here since they don't keep a state cache like the proprietary ones, so state changes are more expensive on those drivers. And there seemed to be a pretty significant performance bump here for Minecraft. And this person here says they tested 10 games: Call of Duty Black Ops, Punch Time Explosion, GoldenEye Reloaded, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and a whole bunch more here. And they saw FPS go from approximately 15 FPS to an average of 18 FPS, so all good on their end. So this commit has been merged, and it appears it's still being evaluated overall. Hopefully things are okay. This is pretty impressive if you ask me. And speaking about impressive and emulators, next up here we're talking about Manic Emu, which is an all-in-one retro game emulator for iOS. They say it packs powerful features while keeping a clean, sleek UI and delivering buttery smooth gameplay. And Manic Emu just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 1.7.2 is the latest release. And taking a look here, there's a bunch of fixes, improvements, and brand new features. So they've adapted it for iOS 26 Liquid Glass. They've added a light mode appearance. They've improved the overall UI visual experience. They've redesigned the default skin for Game Boy and Game Gear. They've added microphone simulation for NES. You simulate blowing or press L3 on your controller. Added NES palette support with the option to upload custom .pal files and even more. And speaking about emulation updates on mobile, but switching from iOS to Android here and talking about Citra MMJ, where MMJ stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano. And Citra MMJ just got a brand new update out of nowhere. So the previous update for Citra MMJ was back on February 20th, and there were a lot of people wondering if this emulator was dead. And it appears not. It appears that Citra MMJ is still very much alive. There's a brand new update on GitHub for Citra MMJ that just released. If you are interested in following along with the developer, they do have a Weibo account. I think I said that right. And I'll drop a link to that in the GitHub link in the description below as well. There's a lot here. They post roughly a couple of times a month, maybe 3 times a month, give or take, about updates and other things. But let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I am very surprised to see Citra MMJ still going strong. And speaking about stuff going strong, next up here we're talking about GOG and the Preservation Program. And there's a very interesting interview which I would recommend checking out, talking about some of the nuances in regards to the program and some of the crazy things they've had to do to get games. So over here on the game business, underneath that video, there's an entire article that goes along with it. And taking a look here for GOG, they say there are 3 riddles that GOG has become good at solving in regards to their preservation program and getting games on the preservation program. They say there's the aforementioned technical riddle of just getting the game working. Then there's the commercial riddle of ensuring it makes financial sense for all involved. But before all that becomes the riddle of finding out who owns the game in the first place. So they go on to say here, and this is wild, GOG hired a private investigator to locate someone in the UK who had inherited the rights to a bunch of games. But that person was living completely off the grid. That sounds pretty great. Without any cell phone or online presence, he didn't even know that he owned the rights because this was just an inheritance package. But it was a similar outcome. He was super supportive of preserving his family's legacy. Overall, I'd recommend checking out this video. There's a lot of information in it, and it's a very good insight into everything that goes on. And well, maybe not even everything, maybe a slice of everything that goes on. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about insightful, next up we're talking about Nintendo. Now, we talked about Nintendo about a week ago when there were reports out there that Nintendo had been hacked by the Crimson Collective group. And Nintendo has now responded. So this information is up on the Gamer, and I guess this is Nintendo's quote: "We have not confirmed any leak of personal information, and there has been no leak of development or business information." On top of that, they say here that some external servers that displayed the Nintendo website were defaced, but that's about it. And there's a couple of things I want to point out here. So firstly, based on the way they wrote this statement, I understand it, or I'm reading it as they investigated whether or not development or business information was leaked first. And then they investigated whether or not personal information was leaked. And the only reason I'm saying that is because they seem to confirm that there was no leak of development or business information. But they haven't confirmed any leak of personal information, and this tells me that they're currently investigating, just haven't found anything yet. And secondly here, I would say that Crimson Collective is not a group to be taken lightly. I mean, they were behind a Red Hat hack earlier this month, and they took 570 gigs of data. And it's also worth noting that sometimes the leaked information takes a little bit of time to surface online, like we're seeing now with all of these Pokemon leaks. And speaking about taking some time to surface online, next up we're talking about NordVPN. My segues have been horrible today. Anyways here, NordVPN has just open sourced their Linux GUI client. Now, it is worth noting this doesn't mean everything for NordVPN is open source. There's still some proprietary stuff. The major stuff is proprietary. But they say here, since launching the Linux GUI in May 2025, adoption has soared. In just 100 days, the number of Linux devices active daily grew by more than 70%. So they've open sourced the NordVPN Linux GUI. They go on to say here, and I think this is worth pointing out, while the GUI and CLI are now open, our core VPN infrastructure, authentication systems, and backend services remain proprietary. I've received a whole bunch of messages talking about NordVPN and people saying it's now open source. It's partially open source. Parts of it are open source, but the main parts of it are not. And speaking about open source, next up we're talking about PlayStation 2 emulation with PCSX2. And Gardner Bryant has a very interesting interview with a couple of PCSX2 developers up on his website. So if you are interested in this one, I would recommend checking it out. It's titled "Keeping the PlayStation 2 Alive Inside the World of the PCSX2 Emulator." And this is not a light interview. There are a ton of questions in here. I mean, here's an example of one of the questions. How do you feel about the recent-ish emulators Yuzu and Ryujinx and the various Android emulators which end up being shut down? Additionally, they talk about the future and what's next for PCSX2. And listen to this. Now that PCSX2 seems largely feature complete, how do you decide what fixes, updates, or small improvements are worth prioritizing going forward? And this one here, are there particular areas, compatibility, performance, or platform support where you still see meaningful gains to be made, even if PCSX2 is essentially in maintenance mode now? Overall, I think this is a real neat interview. I mean, it provides a whole lot of information and insight into not only PCSX2, but some of the developers behind it. And speaking about developers or developing or development, next up here we're talking about Nintendo, and it's being reported that Nintendo DS is headed to NSO. This information was discovered via a patent, and this is Mike Odyssey's tweet. So Mike says the following patent shows how Nintendo will manage the dual screen situation on Switch 2. You will have 3 options. 1. Dual screen with the parent screen and child screen. 2 is the single screen mode, picture-in-picture. And 3 is switch mode, switch between screens. Now, unfortunately, I don't know when Nintendo DS is headed to NSO. I don't know if Nintendo DS is headed to NSO. I think it's reasonable to expect Nintendo DS headed to NSO, but unfortunately, sometimes patents get filed and are never acted on. But let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Would you be interested in Nintendo DS emulation on the Switch or Switch 2? Next up, we're talking about a couple of new laptops from Gigabyte, and Gigabyte has just launched new versions of the Gaming A16 Pro and Gaming A18. And the chip choices here are a little bit puzzling. Let me know your thoughts about this one, but the 2 cores powering these laptops are Intel Core 7 240H and the Ryzen 7 260. I would have expected maybe something a little bit more recent and arguably more powerful like the HX 370. Anyways here, they're also paired with the RTX 5070 Ti and the RTX 5080. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, AMD does not get the good GPU or the better GPU. So the A16 Pro is powered by the Core 7 240H and it either gets a 5070 Ti or 5080, whereas the 18-inch laptop is powered by the Ryzen 7 260 and it gets either a 5050, 5060 or 5070. Not the 5070 Ti or 5080. Again, let me know your thoughts about this stuff, but I think these are very interesting choices overall, and I'm baffled as to why Ryzen doesn't get the better GPUs. But moving on from that and switching from laptops to something arguably a little bit more mobile depending on the device. We're talking about Android, and Hitman Absolution has just launched on the Google Play Store. Now, from my understanding, this was a pretty anticipated title, so I'm curious to see how it's reviewed overall. Unfortunately, right now at the time of filming, there's not enough purchases and reviews of this thing yet, considering it's just got 1+ downloads. And last up here, we're talking about Ubisoft and The Crew 2, and Ubisoft just had their Crew Showcase 2025. One of the big takeaways here was for The Crew 2, and hybrid mode is now available, meaning the game can be played offline. Now, I don't know about you, but I would say this is a feature that probably should have been there from the start, at least from a gaming perspective, maybe not a company perspective. Anyways, it is there now, so offline mode is available as of today's update. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.